First Radio.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to Word First Radio, the podcast brought to you by Word First Ministries. I'm your host, Jacob O'Neill, and as always, I'm joined by my friend Cameron.
Hello.
And Cameron, the month of April happened.
Goodness gracious.
Yes, and that was pretty amazing. I'm sad that it's almost over. I'm sad that it went by so fast. And also looking forward to the future. So we'll be talking about how our month has been.
Yeah.
Last time, or sometime during the last time, in the last couple episodes, we talked about how we planted a church recently.
Yeah.
And that's been firing on all cylinders.
I think so.
It's been awesome for us. And the beginning of this month, right at the end of March, because Easter was in March this year, we had our very first Easter service as a church.
Yeah, we did.
That was pretty crazy.
I think so.
Tell me what that was like, Cam. How about we share with our people back at home what that was like?
Yeah, well, I wish I had something more sort of, I don't know, say interesting to report. But we had a church service.
Yeah.
So we did what you would normally expect, but of course, it's sort of the highest holy day in the church calendar, and we got to share. There was only our second worship service together. So, we've talked about what we're doing as a church and how, like, our Sunday is important. Our Sunday is essential to our community, but it's not what defines our community.
Sure.
So in that sense, our Sunday worship service is a little bit less of an event. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
like
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit less of an event, and it's a little bit more like intimate and personal. And we just do it in my living room, which is, I think, really wonderful. And so we did one of those on Easter, and we're still members of Home Church. And so the way that we've been doing it since we've launched our church plant is Home Church meets on alternating Sundays. And so we meet for worship service in between Sundays. And then we spend our weeks doing lots of things together, lots of missional living together.
Right.
So anyways, this is the first Sunday where Home Church, they broke their calendar and did 3 Sundays in a row so that they could spend Easter together, because so many churches in Norway don't celebrate Easter as a church. It's very common for Norwegians to take off to the cabin and get their last sort of ski weekend in. It's a thing.
Yeah, they travel for Easter.
Yeah, they travel.
Even if you're a Christian, you travel for Easter.
Yeah, people ask you, what are you guys doing for Easter? Or how was your Easter?
Right.
And I'm like, well, when you ask me that question, you're asking me about one day.
Right.
But in Norway, it is not one day.
Exactly.
In Norway, it's the whole week leading up to Easter. And then second Easter day, the Monday that they all take off to.
Yeah.
So,
because why not?
Mm-hmm. Let's do it. So anyway, so our Easter was kind of a normal worship service. We did not receive communion together, which is something that I inherited from the Orchard. We take communion most Sundays, but the 2 Sundays we don't are Christmas and Easter. So, because those are both celebrations of Christ's life.
Right.
We do take communion on Good Friday, and we as a church didn't have a Good Friday service, but if we do, then we'll receive communion together on that evening. So anyways, we had a really nice, lovely, I think, church service. We were hoping for some springtime weather because it had been coming back that week, and then it was sort of a gray and overcast day.
Yeah.
And of our 3 Norwegian community members, 2 of them were out of town. And so Jon Ingve it was us that came here as missionaries. And then Jon Ingve, who you've heard from on the podcast, was here with us. So we took a picture. I think it's on our social media in my backyard of just us together after having celebrated Easter.
It is a great picture. It was taken with the highest quality. It was a great picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I'm curious to hear your perspective.
I mean, more or less the same. I mean, my perspective is just a little different as someone who has to learn Daivada Ada every year, which is the traditional Norwegian worship song that everyone does. Like if you don't sing that song during your Easter service, like something is wrong. Like definitely you're going to get like weird looks, even though nobody's there because they're all at the cabin and traveling. If you don't sing that one on Easter, you're going to get some strange looks.
Yeah.
So that one is difficult. And I was talking to Jon Ingve about it actually afterwards. And he was like, yeah, I actually think that song is hard too, because it has words that like you don't normally say like ever. And I was like, I know. Trying to learn Norwegian and trying to learn that song is still very difficult. There's definitely a unique challenge trying to say words that you don't normally say in Norwegian at all.
Yeah.
But anyways, I've actually grown more fond of it over time. This is, I think, like the 3rd year that I've played it.
Yeah.
I remember the first year, this was fun at home church playing it. And I have no idea what I'm doing, right? Like, because I like literally just started learning Norwegian like 8 months ago. This song was a lot harder in the first year. And I remember like very clearly, very obviously, very badly messing up the song in front of the entire church. And we all just kind of stopped and laughed for a second during the song, which is definitely not what you want to do on an Easter worship service kind of thing. But it was fun. We all just kind of just brushed it off, and that was kind of like a fun little moment. But it was a little embarrassing. But I've actually grown more fond of it as it's gone on. It's actually one of my favorite Norwegian worship songs.
It's great. Now. Well, that's one of the things we've talked about on the podcast before. But sort of realizing, Christianity has been in Norway for over 1,000 years,
right?
And so it's something that we taught ourselves and we talked about, and we knew in our minds was true. Like, we are not going as Americans to teach the Norwegians how to be Christians,
right?
There were Christians in Norway very long before there were Christians in the Americas, and we get to learn that and see that all the time. So it's like, it's going to sound stupid coming out of my face, I know,
right.
But it's like you don't expect that they have traditional hymns.
Sure.
So like when we sing traditional hymns in the United States, they have kind of old language, and they were written a long time ago, and we understand them, but we're singing words that we would never really speak or use in regular conversation, and they have the same thing.
Right. Yeah, it's about 150 years old. 140, 150 years old. I'm not going to do the math.
It's like reading letters from the Civil War, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
These people talked so differently. Well, that's true. But also, the type of... It's a song. It's not a conversation. So the language is different.
Right.
And, so we continue to learn.
So that was unique.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you guys singing along with me.
Yeah. But another
help. Yeah.
So in one sense we had an Easter service, but in another sense we didn't have an Easter service.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The church got together.
And we studied the scriptures together, and we talked about the resurrection, of course, and why this day is so important for us to celebrate. But it wasn't an event. And on a regular Sunday, like all of our community members, like they know you could invite someone if you want to, right? If you and Ingva's parents are in town, they can come to church here with us on Sunday, but it's not really an attractional event. We're not, our goal isn't really to attract members from outside of the community. We do that with other events and other things that we do very often throughout the week.
Yeah. Do you mind saying more about that? Because, and this is a risk because I didn't tell Cameron about this earlier, but do you mind saying more about that? Because one of the things when I was in the U.S., which I was recently, it was very awesome, and I will talk about that in a minute. One of the things that some people asked me in the U.S., which was like, okay, well, what would stop you guys from like making it an event, basically, or like opening it up to like everyone, like, hey, everyone in town, like this is the thing that's going on Sunday mornings, just come on down and come by. What's the thought process behind there? What would stop us from making an event versus what we're doing now?
Yeah. So it's what you might call a closed group. What we're doing now. So we don't advertise it. Of all the stuff you see on our social media, we talk about a lot of stuff. We don't talk about Sunday service. I think we did one time and just decided we're not going to advertise it anymore. There's no sign outside. There are a few reasons. And I'm going to talk about them in a way that seems like I'm being critical of other ways of doing church, and I am not in the slightest being critical of other ways of doing church. We're just doing something different. And so questions like the one that you just asked, I understand. It's kind of like, well, this is how we do church. Why wouldn't you do it like this? And go, well, we're doing something different with the same or similar goal, but our strategy is different. So the question is something like, well, why wouldn't you open up Sundays? Why isn't that something why wouldn't you just like invite everybody to come, or that be the thing you invite people to? There are a few reasons. The first is that we want to have a depth of relationship and discipleship in our services that is difficult to achieve when your service includes non-believers. So I'll just say that like that.
Okay.
So but one of the things that more traditional church, I'm just going to say traditional church, and that just means church as we know it. But traditional church is concerned with that. Like, we have people who are coming who are not believers. And how do we make sure to accommodate them and not make it too weird for them? And then when they get here, they're welcomed by the community and the love of Jesus, and they are able to endure this weird stuff because in church we do weird stuff, right? That you never do in any other area of your life. But we don't, after a while it seems normal to us and it doesn't really seem weird. So how do we do the weird and important stuff without it being too weird for other people? And how do we teach in a way that makes sure that we can reach everybody and bring them with us? And I think that's good and valuable. That's not what we're doing. During our service, it would be like we aren't trying to accommodate people who aren't believers. Another reason is because there are lots of churches that do that. So maybe you're evangelizing in the park and you're talking to people and they go, that's interesting. What should I do? And you say, come to my church. And you have a church service on Sunday. That's what home church does. Right. And if you go to home church on Sunday, you are going to be welcomed and loved and fed, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. And feel like you belong.
You feel like you belong. It's all beautiful. Yeah. But there are a lot of people here, or at least there's some number of people who will never accept that invitation. Coming to church on Sunday, they just won't do. They're not interested. And so we don't want to create space and call it a program. Don't want to create space on Sunday to accommodate the people who aren't going to come, because we're trying to reach those people who would decline the invitation to come to a church service on Sunday.
Sure.
So we deliberately do some other stuff, including sort of living intentionally, living missionally, which I know those sound like cliche buzzwords, and most of the time they are. But the idea is my whole life is a mission field. And as I meet people and evangelize and talk to them about spiritual matters, it's like, well, what's the next connection point going to be? And as a community, we have established several of those next connection points that are something other than a worship service among Christians, because we want to be able to be devoted to the teaching of the scriptures and worship together and the teaching of the apostles and discipleship and saying common prayers. Like we recite the Apostles' Creed in our service, and we recite the Lord's Prayer in our service, and we confess our sin in our service. And those are all things that non-believers can't do with their whole heart. And so when they can, you're welcome. Like I said, like if one of us has parents in town, my parents are going to be in town in a couple of months, and they'll be joining us on Sunday, and it'll be wonderful. But we're not structuring our services or designing our services around having non-believers with us. We create other space for that. And I think that does another thing. So I said, first of all, and then said all of that stuff. But secondly, I said that Sunday is important and vital and essential to our church community, but it's not the definition of our church community. And I don't want it to become the definition of our church community. So when Sunday is the thing that we invite people to, and Sunday is a thing sort of called for outsiders, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I say outsiders, hear me gently.
Yeah.
But I mean people who are not part of our church community. When we I want to avoid the temptation to put too much emphasis on that so that we de-emphasize the other things that we do, where we intentionally meet non-believers in their doubt, in their disbelief, in their spiritual state. So that's all in service of saying we design other activities for that. So for example, we have another closed activity coming up, which is just a family dinner. So we do so many things as a community that it requires a lot of work and it can be exhausting. So every other week we have dinner just for us, and it's purely social. The whole point is just to be with each other, share Christian fellowship and some food together, and celebrate our accomplishments and maybe lick our wounds a little bit.
We're actually having it right now this second as you're listening to this, actually. We're having it right now.
What?
If you're listening to this when this comes out, we're having it right now.
It's dinner/podcast recording.
Sure.
No, we're not having...
No, when you're listening to this on Monday, when it comes out, we're having
That's
dinner.
Right. Okay,
yes.
That's what you're saying. I was like, why is he saying? Okay, yeah. I'm stupid.
You're fine.
But then on Tuesday night, we have Skeptics Evening, and that's for people who, in their spiritual journey, can be as far away from God as conceivable. They could be people who openly hate God or hate the idea or the concept of God, and we have space for them where we talk about explicitly Christian topics. So, and they know that that's what's happening. Like, this is a place to debate and argue. So far, it's been a very congenial way, and that's what we hope continues to happen. That's the idea of it. But this is a place to argue and discuss and defend ideas. But then we also have other things we do. We have game nights where we just have people in my house and we play games together. And again, there's no spiritual sort of expectation there. Anybody from any place in their spiritual journey, not everyone's on a journey, but whatever their spiritual state is, can come and just be with us, and we can love on our community and our friends and build friendships with each other's friends in that way. So forgive me for prattling on way too long an answer to, like, the question is, well, what's preventing you from opening up your church service to other people on Sundays? Nothing really. It's not so much the point that everyone else is excluded, but it's like, I'm going to say two things that sound like a contradiction. The point is not to exclude people. Yeah. But the point is, this is for disciples of Jesus and for us. And for most people who the service would be appropriate for are already members of a church somewhere. Right. And we're members of, call it members, we're members of our church community together. And so it's a time for us to join. But if you're not a member of church, then what we're doing on Sundays, like, you can't worship Jesus, right? You can't do these things unless you're part of the body. So I think I'll leave that there. I'm going to risk triply over explaining it, but it's not I'll say, whoever's asking that question, it's not like a strong conviction, this is how church should be, or
definitely
this is not for other people, or whatever. It's just, we're doing something different. We're hoping to reach those people who would never come to church. And we hope to, and we're still designing this. We don't have, it's not perfect. We're still putting our calendar together and figuring out what events work and what kinds of community activities are going to be the thing. But we hope is that we have a place to reach people who hate God, a place to reach people who are apathetic about God's existence, and a place to reach people who are interested, and a place to reach people who have made a decision. And Sunday mornings is for people who've made a decision. And so maybe there's another context in one of our Bible studies, right? We've decided, I'm going to stop answering. Yeah. But we have other places where if somebody says, okay, I really want to know what this is about, and I'm considering, I'm starting to consider these things more seriously. What does worshiping Jesus look like? Well, you'd be welcome. Like, okay, you're one of our friends. We know who you are. You're welcome to come see what worshiping Jesus is like. But our service is not designed around or intended to accommodate non-Christian people who find themselves there. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being willing to take that.
And maybe that will change. I don't think so. I think that's just part of what we're doing. But well,
that's what I said. Because part of what I said. That's not the only thing I said. But one of the things I did say to this person who asked me was that, we're still kind of just figuring it out as we're going. We've got a lot of solid ideas that we're trying, and some of them are working in ways that we thought they would. And there's ways in which we need to adjust and pivot in different ways. And so we're kind of figuring it out. But where we're leading right now, at least in regards to the Sunday service, is that this is generally speaking for the closed group, for the core group of our community. And as we evangelize and as people come to know Christ, other people will be invited as they come in. And of course, we might throw out the whole formula in 2 months and try something else. Yeah, but we're working on it.
Yeah, and I don't think so. So some of the we're discovering and we're experimenting and trying to figure out what works in terms of what works for the community that we're here to reach, and what works for us, like our gifts and our desires, and what we're able to do, what we have literally have the resources to do. What can we afford financially? What do we have time to do, and minutes in the day and energy in our bodies to accomplish. And I don't know how radically that's going to change over the years or however long we're here. I don't know how radically that's going to change. I don't expect it to be turned upside down, but we're very flexible and we're experimenting and figuring it out.
Yeah, awesome. Let's change gears completely.
Yeah.
And let's talk about us.
Okay.
Let's talk about you and me.
Oh, goodness. Is that what this is?
As individuals.
What are we? What are we? Let's put a label on this.
Yeah. Not here, not on the podcast. Okay. But also, after Easter, kind of the second week of April, you and your family did something fun. You went on a trip to Lillehammer.
We did go to Lillehammer. That was wonderful.
How was that? Besides wonderful.
That was so great. Was it so good? It's beautiful. I love Lillehammer. It's such a, I haven't spent as much time as I want to, but every moment I've spent there, I've really enjoyed. And for us, for me especially, it was so surreal. So we visited the Baptist church there. We were invited by their pastor to come and be part of their their spring sort of celebration weekend, where we did there was a guest pastor, and there was me, and I led worship a few times, and we gave different talks throughout the weekend on different topics, and so it was just a different kind of weekend that they do to kick off the spring. And it was funny because it was very cold and snowy when we were there. So it was spring weekend, and we were bundled up pretty tight.
Like you do in spring.
Like you do in the spring in Norway. But we visited this church when we came to visit Norway on vacation in 2018. So we had stayed for several days on this farm outside of Lillehammer, and wanted to go to church on Sunday. And we didn't realize this at the time, but it turns out they're the only church in the area that's open on Sunday. I'm sorry, not open on Sunday, but open throughout the summer. And we were in Norway in the summer. And so we visited the church, and this Dutch guy called Menno translated for us. And there was a pastor from Vietnam, communist Vietnam, talking about the crazy stuff that God is doing there, and how the government is opening up to Jesus and the greatest story ever told. And it was a really beautiful weekend.
That's pretty cool.
I got to experience like a Vietnamese guy speaking, and then that being translated into Norwegian, and then that being translated into English for me by a Dutch guy who Norwegian is his second language. And it was just a wonderful experience. And I had no expectation in my life I would ever be in that building again. And now it's 6 years later, and I got to lead worship, and I got to preach and be with those people again. And I saw that fellow Menno who translated for us in 2018. He was there, and got to see him again. And it was just a really, that trip in 2018 is when I perceived direction from God to come to Norway. And so anyways, it was very special for us. So I had the opportunity to preach, which I always appreciate in a really kind of deep way. It's like, I can't believe that I would have, I can't believe that I would get to do this.
Me, no, of course. No,
I get it, man. And then I got to lead worship with their band. And
how's leading worship in Norwegian? How was that?
It was rough.
Oh, okay.
It was okay. No, it was good. It was okay. I have learned the Norwegian. There's a handful of popular Norwegian worship songs, just like in English.
Yeah.
And I learned them more quickly than I thought I would.
Yeah.
But I had to read. I had to have notes.
Yeah.
And so reading and playing and singing in Norwegian all at the same time. It went okay. It went well, almost without a hitch.
Yeah.
But it was very good. And I haven't had the opportunity to do that very often either since being here. So it was just a weekend full of wonderful opportunities and excellent people. And Sissel, the pastor in Lillehammer, she's just such a sweet, kind, wonderful woman. I saw her again. She was down for the Holte conference this last week in Oslo, and got to see her again. And I hope to visit again soon.
Yeah.
So it was very climactic for me, but a description of the weekend is like, well, it's a weekend of like lunch and preaching and worship. And Marcus Österby was there.
Yes.
He taught a couple of lessons, and it was all wonderful.
Yeah.
The girls were there. They made friends. Celia cried the whole way home. It's like a 2.5 hour drive. And she was just wrecked when we had to leave because she made best friends like she does.
Yeah. That's rough.
So I hope we'll go back again soon. I told Cecile when I saw her a few days ago that my folks were coming this summer, and maybe we would come and visit in the church. And she said, yes, of course, that would be wonderful. And the kids already miss your girls, so come back anytime.
Yeah, 2.5 hours away. That's not bad.
It's not, and it's a beautiful drive. Yeah. You can take the train. We rented a car and drove, which is it's a super great thing to do also. It's a beautiful drive. There's a bollaland. A bolla is like a Norwegian bun called a bolla. Yeah. And this place in Espa is like very famous for them. I think their sign said they've sold 2.6 million so far this year.
Oh, this year. That's pretty cool.
And it's super kitschy. They have a gift shop with just the kitschest stuff, and actually some really great little like local artisanal stuff, like local dairies making brown cheese. And anyways, that's a great place to stop halfway through and get some snacks and some kitschy socks. And
that's cool.
And so it's lovely. I am always. I look forward to going back whenever we can. And Lillehammer is just such a great city. I can't wait to explore it some more.
Yeah, definitely cool. Yeah, we'll have to all take the trip out there sometime soon.
Yeah.
That'd be really
cool. And then just
Very
outside
nice.
of town, I think it's about 40 minutes away, there's an old Stav church that was built in the 1200s.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And they have
those are the wooden churches, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's in Nidingabu. And they have there's a soapstone baptismal font there that's like 1,000 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's crazy. How big is it?
Tiny.
Do you know? It's tiny.
The Stavkirke, they're small.
No, I mean the baptismal.
The baptismal is, they're like baby sized.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like, if I remember it correctly, like, the rook on a chessboard?
Yeah.
Like, imagine a really big one of those. It was probably 3 feet tall.
Yeah.
And the basin was big enough to stick a baby in. So.
Okay. Yeah. No, really, really cool. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys got to take that trip. It sounds like, it was a really special place for you and your heart, and for your family, because now you're all emotionally attached to it.
I don't know how
more.
great.
And,
I don't know how wonderful it was for them to have us, but it was very wonderful for us to be with them.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I remember when they said you were going to lead worship in Norwegian, and I was like, oh, awesome. Like, it would be cool. It was cool because I thought you were going to get all the experiences I got to have in the last couple of years when we were here, where I would go when I would visit a different church and lead worship in Norwegian to try and accommodate, and I would ask, hey everyone, all right, stand up, and everybody was offended in the entire congregation.
Yeah, they didn't like to, in Lillehammer, they did not like to stand up.
Oh, okay.
Well, compared to Oslo, they were a little bit less standy-uppy.
Sure.
Which, that's fine.
Maybe the further west you get, the less standy-uppy Norwegian churches are.
The other way, I think, that we went to the east to Lillehammer.
Oh, never mind.
Is that right?
Right?
I feel like Lillehammer is definitely north of us. I feel like it's east. I think it's closer to Sweden than we are. I could be wrong about that. I don't know.
All right. Well, I'll have to look at a map at some point. Very, very cool. Thanks for sharing that, Cam.
Yeah.
I did not go to Lillehammer. I went to someplace a little warmer. Me and my wife, Motown, went to California.
Woo!
Went to Southern California. So I was there for 2 weeks in April. It was a great time. I mean, so this was our first time back in the U.S. In like 2 years. It's been a long time since we've seen like our parents and Marissa's siblings and my brother and other people, friends from church. It was just great being there, having in and out like 5 or 6 times easily, and trying all the different kind of foods that we missed and seeing some people that we missed. It was just a great time being with everyone. And one of the things I was particularly happy about was I got the chance to fellowship and meet in person a lot of our supporters from Fusion.
Yeah, wonderful.
So that was really great. I texted Pastor Zach from Fusion and was like, hey, I'm going to be in town. We should probably do something while I'm in town because this is the first time I can meet you guys in person. So whatever you guys are down for, I'm down for. And Zach talked to his team and they were like, well, how about we have him come on stage and talk for a few minutes and then have him in the worship team and stuff. Which was really awesome. That was a great opportunity. I was super humbled to be asked to do that, and I, tried to represent the ministry in the best light possible. Cam, did you watch online?
No, no.
Okay,
I didn't.
Well, thanks, man.
Okay. Give me a little grace. First of all, I didn't know it was happening. I was doing my best to leave you alone while you were there, and then we were just busy during the time that they were live streaming their services. So
I'm mostly just picking on him for no reason. I'm obviously not offended, but it went great. Great share. I just gave them a little bit of an update on what's going on, how they can pray for us, and how they can keep supporting us in the future. And that was awesome.
That's so great.
Yeah. And then, coming back, me and Marissa, kind of our whole attitude is like, we're just ready to get back to work. So definitely one of the things that we were thinking about is just, how much this time in the U.S. felt way more like vacation than it did like visiting home, so to speak.
Yeah.
We were, when me and Marissa went out like alone in California, just talking about that. She's like, yeah, I feel like I'm being like set up in a slingshot right now to just like send us back and, get ready back to work in Norway.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one of the things that how we felt. Of course, getting here, actually coming back and on the last day was like really rough, missing our family and things like that and saying goodbye to siblings and parents. I mean, that was really rough and we still do miss them quite a bit. But we're excited for them to come visit us at some point and see Oslo because it's a beautiful place. But I mean, just overall, that's just what's been going on in me and Marissa's life, visiting California. And And
there's something so different. Like when you can take the story back home to California and tell people what's going on, right. But it is very different when they come here and see what's happening. Mm-hmm. And so Whitney and I have not been back to the States yet, but my folks have come to visit us every year, which has been really wonderful. And that's what they've said, like seeing it. You know, they've received those of us who have gone back on vacation. Right. They've seen you guys when you've gone back. And like, it's so great to hear the updates, but like getting on the floor and meeting the people you're talking about and seeing what your life and work and what the church is like there. So all that is just an invitation to the many ones of people who are listening to
right.
Yes. Be in touch and come visit us. It blesses us. And I think it will bless you too. I'll just say that it will bless you too. And seeing how Norwegian Christians worship and cooperate and do the work of the gospel out here is just so refreshing and encouraging. And I think it's really, it'll do your spirit good. Mm-hmm. And we would love to have you. So come see us.
Yeah, please do.
Unless we don't want you to. If there's someone who's listening to this and you're one of the people we don't want you to, like, call first.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's actually what I was going to say, was that a lot of people kept asking us, like, how can we support you guys, like, besides financially? And the important thing is, like, just text us. Yeah. Just send us a text. So if any of you are sitting here thinking, like, well, if they really loved me, they would call me. And I'm just like, listen, it's not about that.
Yeah, right.
I really love you.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm not calling you. Like, I'm not calling you for, like, any particular reason. It's just because we got stuff to do, and I know you've got stuff to do. Yeah. So, but if you're thinking, like, how can I support Word First while I'm over here, send us a text every now and then.
Yeah.
And, call first. And if you're one of those people we extra love, come visit us.
Yeah.
Most of you, come visit us.
Yeah, and even if you're one of those people we kind of love, you probably could come visit us, and that would be okay. But I appreciate you saying that, Jacob, because those kinds of things, to whoever's listening, you don't know how far they go to receive a text message or a note or a postcard, or one time we got a box of from the United States of, like, 4th of July stuff.
Right.
It's just like a couple of flags and a couple of decorations and a nice note, or a letter from the children's ministry at church, and that stuff. We need that. I can't tell. It's just life-giving. Like, we it's so good for us. So if you think about that, that's just wonderful to do. Or, we send out a newsletter every month. If you don't sign up for it on our website at wordfirst.us, send out a monthly newsletter. And a couple of people pretty regularly after they get the newsletter reply, hey, great to see all the stuff that you guys are doing, saying a prayer. And that means so much. And it gives us more energy than you'd think. It gives us so much more. It's like energy to go and do the work.
Yeah. And it does. And it will inspire us to want to call you.
It is inspiring. And
yes.
If you call, we're 9 hours ahead of California time.
Right. Just send a text.
Central European time. Send a text. And if we don't answer, we're probably sleeping.
Yeah, very, very, very cool. So, I guess all that being said, we look forward to hearing from you guys and anyone listening to us. Thank you for sitting here and listening to us talk about our lives for a little bit and how the mission's been going and some of the stuff that we've been doing, and getting to connect with you guys in California was such a pleasure. And it was awesome meeting those of you who I met. It was so great. So we look forward to hearing from you in the future, and we look forward to seeing you again next time on Word First Radio. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Word First Radio. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check us out online at wordfirst.us. Yeah!